Jackie?
This meeting is being recorded.
She did. Pat, we got Jackie. So I'm going to go ahead and give Mary Ann access to, let's see if I can do this. Hold on, to be the host. It's still trying to hit the record. Give me a second. While I'm trying to get her going, Mary Ann and I have known each other, I don't know, Mary Ann, lots of years, we'll just say, lots.
Just say double-digit years.
Double-digit years. So Mary Ann was actually my first client when I decided to leave corporate and start my own business. She was really encouraging. She taught me that confidence that I needed to get going, talked about documentation, you know, what you do for your business, get started. So she's been a mentor of mine for years. And then she was a client of mine for many years. Actually, she was my first client and my last client, because she was the last one that I said, I'm sorry, I have to retire. I can't do this anymore.
But so, I still call you and ask.
She's so awesome, that's fine. But Mary Ann and I were talking about, you know, and I asked her to come and present to us because all of you are small business owners. And many times you don't think to document what you do in your business. And because you are one, you know, some of you are just a one-person business and you know it and you do it all. But something I wanted you to think about too is you're built a clientele up, you've got a strong business. What if you decide you want to retire one day? Instead of just retiring, what about selling your business? So you have to have something substantial to be able to pass it on. So I'm going to turn it back over to Mary Ann and let her explain the what's and whys and things to be thinking about, even if you don't want to do it until a year from now. So Mary Ann, I think you should have host.
Yeah, I do. Before I share my screen, I'll give you a little more background. I have owned 3 businesses in my life. 2 of them were franchises. And my partner and I just never thought of documenting anything. And it became a real problem for us as the businesses grew. So then after some time in corporate America, all on the franchising side of the world, when I opened this consulting practice, which was 22 years ago, I write manuals for other companies. And it occurred to me, boy, I really ought to have some manuals for myself. And it's different when you're writing for yourself, because you can't call up people and say, hey, I just need you to find me that information. You've got to come up with it yourself. But it's really important. And so I thought I'd just share some ideas on how to do this and how to do it without a lot of hassle. So I am going to share this. Hold on one second. Can you all see my screen?
Yeah.
All right, why won't it play? All right, here we go. So I don't know, I mean, I know that it's an hour later for you folks, but I can't imagine what could be more boring at 7 o'clock in the morning than talking about manuals, but we'll try and make it some fun here. The truth is, they are boring. Nobody reads them. How many of you have employees or contractors? Anybody? Okay, because I'm, all right, I see a few hands there. Not even your employees will use them all the time. They will tend to use your manuals, as reference guides when they can't reach you for an answer, or when they are angry at you and are looking for a weapon. I mean, that is quite honestly what happens. That's why the guy's in jail. They're trying to find something that you did or did not document so that they can pass some responsibility on to you. So this is great. The doesn't want to move. There we go. So the first thing you have to look at when you're contemplating, do you want to write a manual, is what you have. Is it a business or is it your job? The reason that it's different is very much what Deb just said. If it's a business, there has to be an exit plan at some point, and you need to have something to sell. I mean, along with manuals, if you have businesses, try and get registered trademarks. Make sure that your intellectual property is protected and copyrighted, and then have a structure for the business that someone else could follow. And that's where your manuals come in. So why do you even need one? If you read some of the business magazines that are out there now, Forbes recently and Entrepreneur magazine both had great articles on the importance of culture these days. On our franchising side of things, there is a company called Franchise Business Review that polled thousands of franchisees, and they found out the number one thing that bound them to a brand and actually made them get up in the morning when it was hard was the shared culture. And I do think as we're hiring younger and younger generations, culture, what you stand for, what you believe in, is more important to them sometimes than what your pay rate is. So when I hear passion about weight loss, when I hear passion about trying to take away the stigma of CBD and hemp, then that's something you want to capture. Mission, vision, value statements are one of the most important things. And even if right now it's just you, I would say if all you had in your manual to start out with was a culture statement, your mission, vision, values, put that together. It helps you weigh every decision you're going to make. Does it fit with my values? If it doesn't, don't do it. Have any of you been Rotary Club members? You know, you have the 5-way test. And if it doesn't fit in those 5 ways, you don't go ahead. So start there. And it really is just having your business be its most authentic self. The next thing is you need to codify the system. And sometimes that's most important for us as the owners and the starters of businesses than it is for some of our employees. And the reason I'm saying that is that we tend to skip things. If we write down everything we're supposed to do from the start to the finish of whatever your process is, you can refer to that and make sure you're giving your customers the full experience each and every time. I find this is most important if your businesses, like most of yours are service-oriented businesses. Because it's very easy if I have a process, I do it the same way every day. And then let's say, Jackie, in yours, you have a design process, you know what they're going to have to go through, you know what legal hoops like permitting and stuff you're going to have to go through. But if you have someone who's very smart and maybe they have a friend who's an architect and they pull out for some plans, the next time you might get a little lazy because you left out a part on the last one. It's about sense memory. So if you have it all written down exactly what you have to do, then A, you'll remember it for yourself, so you're constantly delivering top-notch service. And the other part is when you do get ready to hire somebody, it's already there for you. So that's where the onboarding comes. If you are bringing people in, even if it's one person, you need to train them. I love that, especially women in small businesses, is a passion for me. But if we have it all in our heads, it makes training really difficult because we become on autopilot. And when we train, we know that there were 7 steps between, hi, I'm so-and-so, and B, here's your product or service delivered, but we don't know how to break it down and tell new staff members. So if you've taken the time, even if you've just written it as a flow chart, to write down everything that you do, it will make onboarding so much easier. It also then, if you do start to decide to grow a staff, you can get more people out there saying, oh, I'm working for Deb Evans and she's great. It was really easy. I knew what was expected of me and I could really excel at this business because they had good information. And then there's compliance. So even if you're one person with one employee, let's say, or even a contractor, and that one is even related to you, it doesn't matter. We all have compliance pieces we have to go through. I'm going to point to Jackie again because it's the easiest one. You have OSHA regulations. You have got to sit down. If you're handling construction at all, you don't need to write an OSHA manual, but at least you need a manual that tells them you're OSHA compliant and where they can link to get the information specific to your industry. You have ADA requirements if you're location-based at all. If you're designing websites, one of the #1 drive-through lawsuits these days are non-compliant websites. So Steph, on the legal side, you probably have heard of some of these suits that happen, that there are people, they have no use for your website. They're just going out looking for ones that aren't ADA compliant. And that might spread beyond just that, but other pieces, if you're location oriented, that you have to remind your employees you are ADA compliant. If you're location based and they're going to come to you, you have to sit down and tell them, what are the regulations regarding letting a service animal in or not? There are so many rules out there that you want to be compliant. But your #1 piece, and most of what people are writing manuals for on small businesses, are employment issues. What are your hours? What are your break times? What do you do? 1 or 100 employees, you need to document it. So there is a tremendous amount of legal work. The world is run by insurance companies and attorneys these days, and that's not an opinion piece. That's the reality, and you have to adapt to it if you don't want to endanger all this great work that you've all created by not being compliant and have somebody sue you out of it. And the other is IP protection. So I'll let you in on this. I'm where Deb is. I'm at a point where I'd like to retire. And what I have is 20 years of accumulated knowledge for putting together franchise manuals, and it's taglines, and it's logos, and it's a name. You need to make sure that you and your employees are reminded, preferably in writing, how to use things correctly. So for instance, if your company has a long name, so let's say it's Mountain Women in Business is actually your company name, and you just start to shorten it, Mountain Women. Well, you have lost some protection on your intellectual property. And especially if you register that and get that trademarked, you need to use it the way you trademarked it. Otherwise, somebody else can challenge that you don't use it. And you need to let your employees or even your partners have it in writing and remind them what you have to do to use all that information correctly. All right, so how many people went, well, I don't know how to do any of this, and it sounds really long and it's really boring, and yeah, writing them can be boring, but you can make it pretty easy. I'm all for keep it easy on yourself. So the first thing is make it really easy to use. Build everything online. And that could be as simple as maybe a shared Dropbox, to if you have a portal for your business and you're going to put things up there. And the manual, don't think about it as having to have 2 covers and a binder. That's pretty old school. It can be, if you define it as such with your employees, anything you write, any memo you put out, any new product or service rollout, that can all be part of your manual. I would recommend that maybe at least once a year you pull it all together and make it look like a shared document, at least branded the same way. You don't want to be caught up in all the government agencies. I just went and told you all the things you have to do. But if you can link to the part of the OSHA website that is related to your business, that's great, because they change their mind every 20 minutes, and that keeps your manual up to date and it keeps you relevant. So look up all those sources, create the links, tell people to go to them. You need to read them though, and also make sure that above and beyond having written descriptions of things, you might have signage that needs to be posted even in your home office if you have anybody that shows up there once. But here's your number one thing: work with your payroll processors. So if you do have employees or an employee, I am a firm believer that it's worth all the money in the world to hand off payroll processing these days to a professional company. Besides all the things that they will do your filing and they will take care of all that for you. All the major ones like Paychex and ADP, SurePayroll, they all offer a service to write date-specific, annually updated employee handbooks. Now, I'm in California. We make employment law for sport. We, one year, had over 145 new laws go into effect on the first day of the year. And who can absorb all of that? But the payroll processors have already done that. They've adjusted the template for their manual, and you pay extra for it. But the other thing is, if that employee ever challenges you on something that is related to the content of that handbook, they do defend it in court, as long as you've maintained what you're supposed to do. So don't think you have to learn all of that and know it all and rewrite it. Don't reinvent the wheel. It's out there. It is absolutely out there. Use it. These are all your tax dollars at work. Oh, except the payroll processor. That's your hard-earned money at work. And then you look to the professional organizations within your field. So I'm in franchising. We have the International Franchise Association. I'm sure within the remodeling and construction world, you have your own professional organizations. For people like Steph, there's ABA, the American Bar Association. They have forums for all the different specialties within law. They have material that's out there. Vet it before you use it. Just because a professional put it up there doesn't mean they knew what they were doing, but you do want to make sure that you have resources that it's easier to edit than to create, because there's nothing, excuse me, there is nothing scarier than a blank screen, a Microsoft Word and the cursor. And how do you think about it? Can you think of any other resources that would be available to any of you? Well, it's early. You will.
I was going to say, if they start with us as a group, somebody within the network might have that connection, whether it's through the chamber or, just that domino effect of trying to find that resource and connection.
Heck, I'm thinking, Jill, you have a new avenue you could pursue here. So one of the best ways to start is as low tech as you can possibly get, which is buy a banker's box, buy a couple of them. They're always on sale at this time of year because we're all getting organized for taxes. You get boxes for yourself. If you do have employees, just put them where you work, whether it's at home, where you get your best inspirations. Keep a container in the car. When you think of something, you're driving, you're stuck in snow, whatever it is, but you're thinking about business and you go, that's how I'm going to handle something. You can either write it down and throw it in the box, or Deb got me very well trained on how to do notes on my phone, as long as you're going to transcribe them somehow. But don't just always say on that note, a general topic. This is about employee relations. This is about customer service. This is a technical matter. And I'd say give yourself 3 to 4 months of you, your partners, anybody else involved in the company. You're working independently. You're at a restaurant, scribble it on a napkin, throw it in the box when you're done. What's going to happen is if you don't edit yourself, you're writing the manual without realizing it. So you've gotten all your notes, you've thrown them in there. Now you want to create a mind map or something that will lead you to a table of contents. Think of the table of contents as the skeletal structure of your manual. It's the spine. Without that table, you're going to end up with an amoeba looking blob, because we start to connect thoughts that make sense to us, but aren't logical. They're not really hitting everything. Now take all the stuff out of the box and start to put it in the map. What do you need to have included? Is every little detail important? Is it, if I were doing jewelry design, is it important for me, Karen, to know how to hold the pliers? Or is it more important to tell them how to do the beading and close off the line at the end? How much detail do I need as to how much is going to be personal expression? And then what's the order you should present it in? We're adults. This is where adult learning principles reign. If it doesn't make sense and we can't apply it, we're never going to learn it. So you do want to make sure it's in order. And it goes back to me saying, you know, when you're unconsciously competent about what you were doing, you may skip steps. So you really want to look at that table of contents and say, do I really put it all together? So first, the client contacts us. What do we do? So from there, you might have several offshoots. There is, what's our greeting going to be when we answer the phone? How quickly are we going to return messages for calls we missed? What's going to be our requirement when we start talking? How are we fact finding to find out what this call is about and who is the best person to service it? You can go through all the different steps of your business and then determine for yourself how much detail there is, but get that in your table of contents. Make sure it flows. And I would strongly recommend, before you do one more piece, hand this to somebody else who knows what you do, but they don't really know your business, and ask them if it makes sense. Okay? We're all too close to our own businesses. And step 3, who writes it? And the first thing you have to ask yourself, is this the highest and best use of your time? Are you going to spend so much time putting this together that you're not making any money for yourself? That the written word is not where you excel? So if not you, oh, the other one is, will you actually do it? I mean, I think it's, I think, Beth, you could probably really, you know, people make commitments to themselves all the time and then they don't follow through. And that's when they feel failure. Not writing the manual is not failure. It might not be the greatest decision in the world, but you want to know if you're not going to do it, and then that's going to create lingering doubt and pressure for you. Admit that. There are just things. I do not do payroll. I do not do bookkeeping. I don't care how the business is going. Somebody else has to do that for me. So one of the things you can look into are students. There are college classes. I find this, I've had success for many of my potential clients who weren't in a position to afford me yet, to turn around and say, find a community college that has a business course. Talk to the dean of that department and say, could we make this a project for your classes? Is there somebody who could get credit for that? You can get a lot done without paying for it. or hire a paid intern. I don't know in Colorado. Here in California, the day of the free intern is gone. We have to pay them, but it's short term. So you can sometimes bring people in just to do that part. You can find people within your own network who have writing skills and can put this together. Crowdsource it. You can look online for resources. Somebody may not know everything about your business and may not be the best fit to write your whole manual, but they may have bits and pieces that you can gather and put it together. Always ask permission. Just because it's on the internet doesn't mean it's free for you to use, but there are online resources. And a lot of times go back to those professional organizations because they very often have branches that have written a lot of great material that you can work with. And then keep it updated. So nothing is ever done. Time is a continuum. And if you try and say, ooh, I am documented, I have a manual, you are not standing still. Everything is going by you. And so think about it. If you say, this is done, and I step off the treadmill of time, I'm not staying in the same place. Everybody's going past me, and I am simply falling behind. So keep it updated because A, you can create what's called vicarious liability. And I'm not an attorney. You need to ask Steph about all this stuff. But if you put out information that's incorrect and someone acts on that incorrect information, you can share liability for that. You don't want that. So make sure that if you are a regulated company, that you are current in today's regulation. You want to, whoops, I knocked myself out of that, but that's okay. We're pretty much done with it. You want to make sure that if you've changed processes, that you get it in there. If you changed a process, don't get rid of your banker's box after you're done the first time, throw it back in. And then remind yourself in 6 months, in a year, whatever, go back to the box, rewrite what has changed. And keep it simple. If you have a simple business, you need a simple manual. If your business is very complicated, it's going to be a more complicated piece. Now, at the end of your business, if it's not a job, it's not a hobby, it is your business. When you do want to exit it, and one way or the other, we're all going to exit our businesses, you have current documentation that says you could now show them the books and say, here's my earnings, here's the cash flow you're going to buy, and here's the map that tells you exactly how to run the business. If you have codified your intellectual property and you've gotten trademarks and stuff, you say, there's a huge asset, people know this brand, and you now have a package to sell, not something you worked all these years for and you just walk away from. Questions?
Not necessarily a question, but something really good that I thought of when you were talking about the manuals. I'm just me and my clients, and I might not have a full manual right now, but what I do is a contract. And in the beginning, I didn't do them, and I would get in trouble, or people would cancel at the last minute, or people wouldn't, would change their mind of what they wanted and expect the price to be the same. And as long as I do that contract and I stick with my system and everything's on my calendar in 2 different places, it works for me. And that's kind of the same. It seems like at least that's a little bit of an effort or a way that I'm keeping myself accountable and following my own steps. Like you said, rote memory. Every time I deal with people, it's not handling all the legal stuff, but at least it's a step in the right direction. And you had great ideas for a lot of the other things. I do have my own trade name registration. Nobody really comes to my house for the business, but so many good ideas, Mary.
Well, Rachel, I think you should think about all the marketing you do. How do you advertise? How do you market? How do you run the class? How many paintbrushes, what are the kids' ages? I think there's a lot you can, other than your contract, put together in a how-to manual or a checklist.
And I would start, Rachel.
And it's all in my head, like she said, but what happens when I forget something? Yeah, that's true. That's really true.
And then Rachel, I would imagine that your contracts include a scope of work. There is the start of your manual. Pull that scope of work.
Okay,
Pull the next 5 or 7 that you write, because I'm sure they all tweak a little bit.
I was gonna say they all change. They all vary by client. Each one's
Right.
different.
But you're going to find some commonalities. And now in that manual to remind yourself is maybe now looking that there are tweaks in all those scopes of work, you say to yourself, what I really need to do is create an onboarding format or form. I do that with every client that I have. I will sit down and I have set questions I'm going to ask so that I know when I put that manual together, or when you're putting your contract together, that scope of work is defined based on a set of questions of all the details. That's what Deb was saying. Well, how many kids is it going to be? Maybe it's kids, do anybody have a developmental disability? Because you may have to come up with something else. Again, ADA pops in there. So if you start to take some of the forms you all are using to manage your business, there's part of your manual is in there and in the thought process that went behind it.
That's awesome.
Anyone else?
Looking to see. Yep, I think Pat's muted.
Oh, Pat.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, through Royal Fund Management, which is where I do in the market things, we have a compliance officer. Everything is up to date on the website because that changes constantly, wording in a application or whatever. And so we don't keep anything on paper. I make copies of what I've done with a client, but we always have to pull it freshly off the computer. And the same with the Medicare things, I have to deal with compliance through the insurance industry. Medicare is another whole one, and then the SEC. So, I was going to do something with Rachel, and then the surgery came up, but I have to run it through so many areas for compliance before any word is put out on a website or on a Facebook page. So I don't say much.
Well, you're selling a branded product, right, for other people. So if they're maintaining the compliance, and then whatever your agreement is with them on how you're representing these different financial products, you have a lot of areas of government looking over your shoulder. And
Oh, yeah.
I have to imagine you also have some good industry organizations that can guide you through that.
We do. I just go directly to the compliance areas or through our compliance officer, definitely through the SEC, because she keeps everybody on top of things, and they actually have a compliance company that they use. It's impossible to keep up on all of this.
Years ago, we didn't even know how to spell compliance, and now we're running.
That's a really, really good point though, because like Pat wants me to do something for her. Josie is having me do marketing and advertising for her. Could something come back on me? I never even thought about that. As long as I show them what I'm posting, they say it's okay. Could something come back on me legally? I never thought of that before because I don't have any, I'm just helping with marketing. I don't have any whatever connection. I'm not hired, well, I guess I kind of am hired by these entities to help them do this stuff, but I have to make sure I'm doing things in
I
a
can't
kosher way
answer that
for
because I'm not
them
an
also.
attorney. Yeah, I can't answer that because I'm not an attorney.
But that's interesting.
But I would say, I'll tell you how I run it with mine. My manuals, when we write them for franchise companies, they're in 4 phases. and the client has to sign off. There is a proof sheet on each phase before I will type one correction that says, I take total responsibility for the changes I've requested. And that way, and I keep those on file forever and ever and ever, that if they ever got sued for some of the content in the manual, it was their responsibility to, mostly I'm interpreting their stuff, but it's their responsibility to make sure that we did it right, and they sign off on it. So, and my attorneys have said that's it's not perfect, but it's a really good wall for me. You may consider that. And, you know, like anybody who is doing, like Jill, if you're doing content creation, make sure they sign something and have your lawyer or have Steph write up a proof kind of form that is putting the responsibility on the person who's giving you the content that you're trying to massage and manipulate and, you know, wordsmith, that they own the responsibility for what it is, because you can't possibly I'm sorry, I've got to turn the heater off that's under my desk or I may explode. You can't possibly know the rules and regulations of every industry that's out there. You just can't.
I feel like I'm constantly doing, you know, covering my butt for all the stuff that I do, both bookkeeping and paralegal.
Yeah, you're just kind of like, between Pat, I think, is probably in order. I would say Pat's probably the most regulated, because we don't want anybody messing with our investments and our livelihood, and don't mess with my Medicare. Thank all you taxpayers, because I'm getting fixed from top to bottom now that I'm on Medicare. The other part is then you're in the legal end, but I would say then Jackie is probably next in the highly regulated, because you have all the OSHA and the safety compliance stuff, and the liability for your designs and such. So yeah, we all should be aware that even if we think it's a passion project of ours, the minute we start talking and giving our advice to other people, that's a whole other discussion that you should have a good attorney on. But there is compliance with everything. I'm just telling you, once you figure out what you have to comply with, write it down, so that if anybody comes back at you, I mean, half these manuals are just so you can prove, Your Honor, I had a policy. Nobody read it, but I wrote it. That's all we care about.
And I will let everybody know, I followed Mary Ann's advice and easy steps to get started when my husband, who was a one and only business person in home inspections, but then I decided to step in and help him schedule calls, which that's all I was going to do, is just schedule his calls. But to schedule his calls, I needed to know a little bit about what he was going to do and what time he's going to arrive. So I had to sit down with him and spend time with this checklist and then turn it around and put in a manual, which we then shared with somebody when we left the state of Texas, who took over his business. So you got to start somewhere, and it's frightening. It's like, oh crap, where do I start? But I think following Mary Ann's steps with the box and the I had so many little pieces of paper jotted down and then pulling it together. You can do it. So
you could see my computer. There is a halo of different color Post-it notes that's all around it, because I'm constantly doing that for the things I need to, you know. So this side is all the volunteer stuff I'm on, and notes we have to make for documentation there. I'll have, ask a client about this and this. They're the greatest invention in the world, because they just make it easy. I pull the Post-it note off. I can say I'm done, and I can throw it away. So there are resources out there. If you are not one who's used to handling material, and this is very generational, if you want everything online, that's great. Just keep it organized. You know, if we use Dropbox in our business, and you can have a gazillion subfolders. Just stay organized, and then eventually try and corral it into something that makes sense. It's not hard. I probably shouldn't say that, since I've made my living writing these for a long time, but it's really not hard if you make a commitment and you have a system to do it, and you just look at it occasionally and keep it updated. No one's judging. Well, maybe, but in the beginning, nobody's judging you. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, no one's judging you. My husband judged me terribly, but we managed. We're running out of time. Mary Ann, thank you. I knew you would be a wealth of information. I see in the chat that everybody's thanking you. Appreciate it. You may hear from some as they get started. I'm sure
I'd
you.
love to ask questions. I'm here. Just either, call, shoot me an email, LinkedIn, whatever you want to do. If you
You're
have
on
a question,
linked.
I'm happy to answer it.
Good. Thank you, Mary Ann.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
So for everybody else, I tried to jot down the announcements, and sorry, I was paying attention to Mary Ann, but I didn't want to miss all the announcements of things that we have coming up. So it's in the chat. Our next in-person meeting is December 1st. It's I love to bring treats, but if somebody else wants to bring some food to share, that would be great. It is going to be a Mountain Resource Center at 8 a.m. After we do our little white elephant gift exchange and we feed our faces and drink our coffee, Beth has volunteered to organize a crafting table. The materials will be about $8. We'll pay to Beth when she's there. You call them angels, call them fairies, call them whatever you want to call them, but come and have fun, right, Beth? Perfect. Other announcements, we have the Conifer Holiday Parade / Market that we're going to have a table. So Kate, this might answer some of the questions that you and I were chatting about. So during the year, Mountain Women in Business participates in events. And the organization pays for the event participation, and we'll have a table or a booth or whatever the space may allow. Pat has been our organizer. She's done a super job of organizing these events. And then there's usually somebody in charge of that particular event to organize who wants to be at the table. So the next one is in Conifer for the Conifer Holiday Market Parade. Nicole Brinks, which you'll find her on our membership directory, or email me and I can give you her email address. Anybody that wants to participate that day can take a time slot and put your material there, or you can't be there and you have pamphlets or business cards you want to give her or flyers. Nicole's happy to take that for us and share. She's also put together a member binder that has all of the members' names and a QR code for us. And that says who we are, what you do, how to contact you. And then anybody that comes to the booth and says, oh, I'm looking for a designer, I'm looking for someone to help me with financials or bookkeeping or copywriting. All she does is open this binder. She says, here, scan this code for this member. And they go away with our information. I just think it's awesome. Other events.
It's gonna be great.
What have I missed that I put in the chat? Pat, Stephanie, Rachel, have I missed something? Rachel?
Not an event, but our member Josie, I'm helping her now through the end of the holidays at the Meeting Sanctuary in Indian Hills. You'll see me post about it on our Facebook page, but they've turned the Meeting Sanctuary into Santa's workshop.
Oh.
And you can reserve time with your families to either come take pictures with Santa and visit with Santa. You can come build gingerbread houses and do arts and crafts and visit with Santa. There's all these different little packages. And there's also a holiday gift store. It's small, but it's very quaint. It's cute in part of the downstairs, and you can come help support us that way too. I'm working with her part-time and it's just gonna be a lot of fun. So that's one other not event, but something that's going on throughout the holiday season if you need something fun to do with your families. Or hire me to do a canvas painting class and keep everybody entertained when you get crazy from all the relatives visiting.
And the members that are doing things like Josie at the Meeting Sanctuary, we're posting that information under the community tab of our website. And since Laura designed this website, and Jackie, you are very fortunate you got Laura's time to do a website. Our traffic has been phenomenal. And we're with
Awesome.
the SEO that she has behind that, we're finding that we're also helping the members with their events, or the chamber when we post the information about the chamber. So it's kind of like a domino effect. We post their stuff, We get traffic, they get traffic. So don't forget to share that with our email address, mountainwomen@business@gmail. I'll put it to the website, share it with Rachel so that she can then share it to all the Facebook pages. So
Yep, I share a lot of things to like over 42 Facebook pages at least once a week. And I can't do that for every single person's, but a lot of things have Mountain Women in Business tagged also.
yeah, and that's how we're getting our traffic. So
One
if-
thing, I'm looking for events that we can go to and have, participate in the spring. I don't know of anything until Bailey Days, and that's middle of June. So if you hear of anything before that, let me know. We'll see if there's interest and if we can get into that particular venue. We are trying to keep this open and, for members to make it so that you can do an event. It's part of your dues. So let me know what there is out there.
perfect. Very good.
If people want to see the angels, that's
Ah,
what they look like.
you,
Oh, how cute.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Are
they're
those
really
jingle
pretty.
bells
They're
on top?
really, they're halos, but if you do fairies, you can take the halos off. So whatever you want to do, they look great on trees. I hang them places, and they're really easy to make and fun. So come join us.
Perfect. And I have one more announcement. I sent everybody, all the members, a survey. If you did not receive the survey, let me know. But I am overwhelmed with 80% participation of completing the survey. So it's phenomenal, it's great. And I will tell you now that it looks like the majority of what we received back for time to meet beginning in January will be 8:30 for the Zoom and for
That's okay.
the Mountain Resource. It gives those moms that are dropping their kids off at school, and I'm talking about Katie and Amber, lots of them that can now drop their kids at school and then participate where they've been missing. So we'll talk to
Good.
Mountain Resource Center, make sure that's not a problem. And actually it'd be so much easier to go into Mountain Resource because I don't have to do a keypad and try to get in and
Yep.
sneak in before they're open. So it's just like, oh, thank you.
Yeah,
So,
someone's always there by 8. So yeah, that'd be great. I can make it work.
okay. Anything else?
Nope,
I'm
great meeting.
hanging on with you, Deb.
Marianne was amazing. She was great. So, okay. Thank you, ladies. Jackie, I'll see you in
Thank
about 30
you.
thank you.